This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. From the launch your online shop stage, all the way to the we just hit 1 million orders stage. No matter what stage you're in, Shopify's there to help you grow. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/special offer, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/special offer.
Today on CityCast Boise. At the same time that we've lost budget movie theaters, fancy newer ones are still pretty popular around town. What's going on? Vulture critic and friend of the show Nick Quas spoke with our executive producer Frankie Barnhill about the local movie theater trends that he's seeing. Plus, he has the scoop on where you can find the best snacks and the comfiest seats. It's Thursday, June 20th. I'm Lindsay Van Allen, and this is what Boise's talking about. All right, Nick Qua, you're back. This time, you are our resident movie buff, movie theater goer, and I have questions for you.
Fan.
Yes.
A summer baby I am.
Yes, you are. Okay, well, I mean, you think summer and you think movies, you think summer blockbuster and where to have the best blockbuster type experience. So where are you going? Like, do you have one spot that's like, this is where I see the big movie on the big screen? It's got to be here.
My go-to spot's the Flicks. And it's it doesn't show everything. It doesn't always have these sort of big movies that are coming out in the sort of like the AMCs, the Regals.
Right.
But boy, like, if I could live in the Flicks, I would pop a tent and pull out a little couch and just live there. It's a beautiful little spot.
Yeah, you are on record as a big fan of the Flicks, and we definitely should talk more about like the ins and outs and what's coming and all of that. But I mean, yeah, I think of Flicks and I definitely think like more indie films, like a little bit more underground, which is true, but and an incredible experience with food and all of that they have on offer at Rick's Cafe, of course. But like,
right.
Do you go to like the Bodo Cinema, which is one of the newer theaters, or like the Village, right? The Village movie theater. What do you think of those?
Let's say you want to see one of the big sort of popcorn movies, right? Like something from like a Universal or, Furiosa that just came out. Like if I wanted, I saw Furiosa at Netflix, but like if I wanted like a puncher sound system, like one of those experiences, my go-to is actually Bodo, which is right downtown. It is a reopening and I guess a rebranding of a cinema that it used to be there. But Bodo is like when you want that palatial summer blockbuster experience. Comfy chair, plush situation. It's one of those recliner things. I've been to the Village Cinemas once, and it is a comparable experience. I do live in Boise, so if you live in Meridian or somewhere closer, or if the Village is more convenient for you, it's a great spot. Parking's a little tough.
Yeah.
Parking can be tough, but parking's also really tough downtown. So like you really kind of have to take your pick in that situation. But let's say you don't want to deal with horrendous parking or walking a longer distance, or maybe it's raining or whatever. Or maybe it's too hot because it's the summer. That happens too.
Yes.
There's always a good standard out by closer to sort of the Boise Town Square area, the Regal Cinemas out there. That's also where the IMAX theater is. So if something, if a movie's coming out that's carrying that experience, Regal Cinemas is where you want to go. I have a huge fondness for that theater because it's where I used to go a lot when I first moved to Boise a couple of years ago.
It truly is an old standard. I mean, you mentioned the palatial experience. It's like, who has the most intense AC that's pumping out the cold air? Who's got the comfiest seats? A little bit of that bougie experience. Yeah, those are probably really good bets. Can we talk a little bit though, like this summer, just as far as what's on offer in the blockbuster realm? I mean, there's no Barbenheimer moment coming, right? Mm-hmm. It's kind of a funky year, as you alluded to, for movies.
Yeah, it's funny. So in my day job, I work for a magazine in the culture section, and we talk a lot about this stuff. We're starting on a pretty strange summer, and this is true if you're talking about like the sort of first run movies, the tentpole blockbusters. It's also true if you have kids. Kids movies are reliable moneymakers. It's a big wave for parents to get kids out of the house. We don't have a ton of what feels like surefire bets outside of like Despicable Me 4 coming out this summer. But that's a big tentpole. It's coming in a couple of weeks, and like if you have a bunch of kids, or if you have kids, just drag them out when it's super hot. You don't really want to go to the river.
Right. You've been to the park a million times. It's time for something different. Yeah.
You've taken it a walk. You've had your barbecues. But it's a tougher season for movies this summer. That's kind of what we're feeling. We're also feeling that's sort of true for television. So, in television, the whole do you want to stay inside in the comfort of your home and watch a movie on Netflix versus going out to the theater? That's also a big consideration to have. To that end, I think it's also useful to point to sort of the cinema experiences here in Boise and in the Treasure Valley that isn't just pegged to new releases, right? So The Egyptian is pretty, has a really interesting slate of movies that they kind of stage as events, right?
Yeah.
They have a couple of things come in. I encourage you to go over to the website to check them out. The Egyptian, large, beautiful space, right downtown Boise. It's super funky. I love how old school it feels. And they don't really announce what they're going to show there until maybe 1 or 2 weeks out. So, it's typically on Thursday nights, Friday nights, and the weekends. You should totally check that out. I also want to kind of point to the Idaho Film Society, which is a relatively new nonprofit that popped up since Treefort, I want to say. They're kind of billing themselves as kind of a sister org to the Treeforts and the Duck Clubs in Boise. And what they do now, they've taken over the old Greyhound station downtown, if you remember where that is.
Which is just so funky and the perfect space for something like this, it feels like the appropriate use, right? Yeah. Absolutely.
They're still ramping up. They're still getting formalized and institutionalized. But they, whoever does the curation in that team has really, really interesting kind of textbook taste. There's a lot of movies that they're screening that I have not heard people talk about outside of film nerd circles. So they really know what they're doing there. And I haven't actually gone to the Greyhound station to check out whatever's showing, but that seems like a nice, cozy space. And if you know what Shadow Puppet is, they operate there too sometimes.
Pretty sure that the Idaho Film Society, that they're partnering with the Egyptian on some films there, right?
Exactly
Which
right.
is a perfect partnership too.
And a couple of weeks ago, I caught a great print of Blade Runner that they also screened at Egyptian. So there's a bit of a relationship to have going on every once in a while. But that is a really, really fun alternative if you want something a little different from your standard movie going experience.
Yeah, I think I'm so glad you mentioned them just because, they're new on the scene. So I'm like, what is this? Who are these people? And what are they doing? And it does seem like something that Boise's been needing is kind of someone to be putting on, indie films or cult classics or whatever, and having this society built around it. So it'll be interesting to keep watching what they do there. And you mentioned, the Egyptian, they've got actually a lot of kids movies coming out there when I was just looking at the
they're really
lineup.
good with that. They're really good with bringing in family friendly experiences there.
Yeah, for sure.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. From the launch your online shop stage, all the way to the we just hit 1 million orders stage. No matter what stage you're in, Shopify's there to help you grow. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/special offer, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/special offer.
Sign up to The Economist for in-depth curated expert analysis of world events and topics ranging from business and culture to science and technology. You'll get the weekly digital edition, online-only articles, curated newsletters on politics, the markets, science, culture, and China, and full access to The Economist Podcast Plus. The Economist is independent journalism for independent thinking. Go to economist.com and get your first month free.
Let's go back to the flicks, though. What else are you excited about this summer that's coming at the flicks?
Oh my God. So right now they're showing a couple of really interesting things. I just saw Ryusuke's Hamaguchi's Evil Does Not Exist at the flicks.
Ooh.
So Hamaguchi, his last film was Drive My Car, which was an adaptation of Haruki Murakami novel that was Oscar nominated that I absolutely loved. Evil Does Not Exist is a quieter, weirder movie that's essentially it's an eco horror or a sort of an environmental movie is a pat way to phrase it. It takes place in a small rural Japanese town in which its inhabitants start. There's an outside capitalist organization that wants to open up a glamping site in their small town. And it is about like the drama that unfolds for that. But it's, that sounds more pedestrian than it is. It's a profoundly weird and strange movie. And I really enjoyed I really enjoyed that movie.
Some relevant themes for Idaho. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Extremely. Actually, yes. When I went to watch it a couple days ago, it wasn't particularly full, but my gut feeling is that this is a movie that a lot of Boiseans and Idahoans in particular might really like kind of vibe with. There's a new Yorgos Lanthimos movie coming out soon. He made The Favorite. He also made Poor Things. That was an Oscar nominated or an Oscar winning film last year for Emma Stone's performance. He has kind of a weird movie called Kinds of Kindness, which is it's kind of a series of short films, extremely strange, a lot of domestic drama and weirdness. Very much looking forward to that too. Are you a big movie person?
Yes and no. I've kind of become more of a stay-at-home and watch TV series person and it's like another thing I want to talk about, is kind of the, long tail of the pandemic and kind of this getting people back into theaters. This has been a conversation for several years, I know. And I'm kind of one of those people that hasn't really returned to the theater, and I probably should, but it's hard to get me there. So
yeah, that's the thing. I mean, your experience is actually more universal than you would think. And we are seeing that in the numbers. I believe they brought in a total box office like showing that's it's like the lowest it's been in a couple of decades. And I think there's a lot of the economics of Hollywood has never been more volatile, and the economics of the theater going business in particular has been very strange. And in part, it's like it's nobody's fault. If it's anybody's fault, it's the studios, because the movies that have been making the past couple of years, they've been affected by the strikes and stuff. But I do share the feeling. Like, I love going to the movies to my very bones. That's the reason why I go out to these things. Yeah,
and thinking about like local theaters and trying, I'll go to the flicks, okay? Like, I'm going to say that right now. Like, it's like I'm going to support the local feeling vibes and things that I can't get anywhere else. But that's where, when I'm trying to decide, like, do I go to Bodo or do I go to Regal Cinemas or whatever, the chain theaters, even though they are a very special experience, it's fairly rare for me. So kind of knowing which ones to go for which kind of experience is helpful. What do you think about, like, okay, side note, food at a theater? Like, are you someone, because is that part of the experience? Because for some people who are really into going to theaters, it's like, well, I have to have the popcorn from the theater. I can't just make popcorn at home and have it feel at all remotely the same. Like, does the food get you there? The really expensive, whatever.
I've tried to make popcorn in my own house, and it's like I have not really mastered the form whatsoever. Yeah. But I am a big snack person. Popcorn, Coke, that's my classics. And you grab whatever, candy that's kind of speaking to you. And again, one of the fun things about the flicks is that they do serve food, and you can either eat out at the atrium or you can take it into the screens with you.
Right.
This hasn't quite come to Boise yet, but there is a growing movement or a growing subspecies of movie theater around the country that where you kind of have a dining experience at your seat while watching movies. So like the Alamo Draft House is a big emerging chain that's around in a bunch of cities around the country. Though last I read, they have been facing some financial troubles. Well, the entire experience is like you get a menu that is somewhat curated to the movie, and you place an order and you kind of have it as you're watching. And I gotta say, it's a really it's really fun.
Interesting.
It feels hokey until you actually do it.
Yeah. Is Furiosa just like like parched burger? Like, what would that be?
Probably it's covered in oil. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, there you go. There it is.
That's part of the fun. That's part of the fun, I think, for those culinary teams.
Yeah. So something that Boise doesn't have, but maybe could be an offering someday. A side note: what do you think about drive-ins? Do you ever go to drive-ins around the Treasure Valley? Is that a thing you've indulged in?
Yeah, so I haven't personally gone to a drive-in at all, but my understanding is that you have?
Yeah, that is one beautiful thing about living in the Boise area, is that there are still a couple of options, way fewer than there used to be, to say the least. But like, there's one in Parma, the Parma Motor View, and I looked up their lineup. They've got like throwback stuff. They have Ghostbusters, but then they do have like Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes and some other blockbusters coming up this summer. And yeah, it's just a hilarious and throwback communal experience. And driving out to Parma and like setting up your car and getting the, dial tuned to the right radio station. And it's a very, very fun, very retro, obviously, experience. But I'm glad they still exist. And they still have utility, and they're packed. People go to those things for sure.
Absolutely. And I heard during the pandemic, a lot of my friends hit up drive-ins, and, for them, it was like a novel experience that turned out to be something more routine.
Right.
But it's funny, when I think about drive-ins, the prevailing pop culture image I have is the drive-in scene in Twister.
Oh my God.
The tornado, which is getting a sequel this year.
I was going to say.
Many, many years after.
Yes.
With my guy, Glenn Powell, who's having a bit of a year this year. That's a movie I'm really looking forward to. I will be probably seeing that in the IMAX Regal situation there.
Okay, I was wondering, are you a horror guy? Do you like, what is it, The Quiet Place, the sequel?
I am not that much of a horror person, largely because I'm already a pretty paranoid person, and I have trouble sleeping in general. I am a connoisseur of reading Wikipedia summaries of horror movies.
Yes.
But I do, when I do watch, like I tend to prefer watching horror movies at home so that I can completely control my environment. But I will say that the few times I've gone to a horror movie in the theaters is incredible. Like people yelling and screaming together is super fun. And horror movies are also reliably, I think, one of the lone kind of bright spots in what has been a tough couple of years for the movie business.
Well, Nick, thank you so much for giving us some great ideas for where to go see movies this summer. Turn that AC on high. Thank you, theaters, for that. Honestly, that'll get me out of the house, is just going to have some free air conditioning. So we appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Pleasure to be here.
That's all for today here on CityCast Boise. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a review. We'll be back tomorrow morning with our Friday News Roundup. See you then.